He is the best in the business. We put out the bat signal and is here once again. Professor of St. Louis University Law School and KTRS Legal Analyst, Greg Willard. Greg, welcome back to the show.
Good morning, McGraw and Kelly.
Good morning.
All right, so I got a text from you yesterday. You said that Cole County judge's ruling was monumental.
Yes.
Why?
Judge beat him. It was eerily reminiscent, McGraw and Kelly, of 1974 and Richard Nixon. And if you look at the path that soon-to-be former Governor Greitens took and the path that Nixon took during their travails, Nixon fought every step of the way. I'm not going to resign. This is a witch hunt. And the U.S. Supreme Court said, you have to honor the subpoena. You have to turn over the tapes. Fast forward to 2018. We heard exactly the same thing from our governor until yesterday. And the judge in Cole County said, you've got to honor the subpoena. You have to turn over the documents. And within 6 hours, the governor announced that he was resigning, just like within a very few days, Nixon announced that he was resigning.
A lot of politics, a lot of marketing, a lot of public relations going on. The man said he didn't do anything wrong. The man said no laws were broken. He's not perfect, but no laws were broken. What did you make of that?
Well, two things, McGraw. Number one, I was struck by his statement yesterday, disappointed to be blunt. I thought it was a time to begin the healing.
Right.
And in a 4-minute statement to use I, me, or my over 24 times, that said a lot.
Yeah. No act of contrition.
Zero.
None even. I might, no sentence. I don't know about the laws, but I broke the moral code. I broke my campaign promises. Nothing.
Zero. So back to your question in terms of was there a crime committed? We may never know, because it sounds like the circuit attorney is going to dismiss the tampering charges, and I expect something will get worked out on the invasion of privacy. So as a technical matter, we will never have a guilty plea. On the other hand, McGraw and Kelly, we have a grand jury who found that there was probable cause to believe a crime had been committed. We have a circuit attorney on the computer tampering, probable cause, and we had the Attorney General of the state of Missouri, a Republican, not a Democrat out on a witch hunt, a Republican, and he found probable cause that a crime had been committed.
All the more reason, then, why do you think they would possibly drop it then?
Well, I think in terms of dropping the charges, again, to draw the Nixon analogy, Nixon got the pardon, but I think at some point, just as a matter of the criminal justice system and what's good for the body politic, Kelly, it's time to move on. What more can we do? The governor was never going to spend any time in prison over the computer tampering or invasion of privacy. So in terms of a resolution, to use Kim Gardner's words yesterday, in terms of a resolution, I think it behooves everyone in the criminal justice system to come with a resolution, and let's move on.
Let me ask you this question, Greg Willard, and I understand, and that's a legitimate point of view. There are allegations that there might have been some foreign nationals putting some money in his campaign. There were allegations of him creating dummy corporations to funnel dark money through to sort of keep the trail of money out, which are serious crimes, which people have gone to jail for.
Very serious.
Blagojevich is spending 14 years in jail for floating an idea of, hey, well, how can this help me? Jeff Smith spent a year in jail for lying to the feds because he didn't put paid for by Jeff Smith's campaign on a postcard and then lied about it. So I get the time to move on, Richard Nixon, Gerald Ford pardon. But that's up to Mike Parson, not up to the prosecutors. And so my question is, and we don't know how this is all going to shake out, but if these prosecutors in varying forms of this decide that enough is enough, can't one make the argument that it really was a political witch hunt? And then if Kim Gardner is going to charge invasion of privacy while he's governor, but not when he's out of office, you could argue she did it only because he was governor.
You could make that argument. I don't buy it, but you could make that argument, McGraw. But I think let's take a step back, and we've used the analogy of buckets on this show before. Let's look at a few buckets. We had an impeachment bucket. We had circuit attorney pursuing the state criminal charges, and then we had the legislative investigation on the Confide app. You raise a very good question. Nobody is talking about it. God forbid if we end up there. But there's a fourth bucket, federal crimes. And if there have been federal crimes committed that the FBI perhaps is investigating, now we are into Blagojevich land. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, the state charges could all sort of fade away, and there may be a federal path. I'm not suggesting for a second on a Wednesday morning that there are federal crimes out there,
right.
But that's a possibility. The other piece, to go back to your question, in Missouri, the governor can only issue a pardon upon conviction. Unlike the President of the United States,
right.
under Article 2 of the Constitution, there can't be a preemptive pardon, a pardon before the crime.
Right.
So I think soon-to-be Governor Parson might someday have a role in putting this behind us, putting all this behind us. But right now, absent a conviction, it rests in the elected officials, specifically the circuit attorney.
I'm going to put you on the spot here, Greg Willard, because this is really very important, and I respect you tremendously. Yesterday, I was watching Channel 5, and they had one of your colleagues on. I don't know the name, but
Judge Wolf?
Is that who it was? Was the Channel 5 legal analyst? And he said on Channel 5 yesterday that I was talking to some of my colleagues at St. Louis University, and we all kind of, and he didn't mention your name, but he said, I've talked to some of my colleagues, and we all kind of agree that there was, and he basically said a quid pro quo, that Governor resigned with the knowledge that these other prosecutors would drop the charges, alluding to the fact that there was some type of deal where Greitens and his lawyers said, you know what, look, he'll go away, drop all these charges.
The Spiro Agnew model.
Yeah, do you think that's possible? And do you think, again, back to my question, you could argue that it was politically motivated if you're going to drop the charges. If I rob a bank and I say, okay, you know what, I'll quit my job, just don't prosecute me for robbing a bank, and the prosecutor says, okay, fine. It seems like there's something wrong there.
Well, that's exactly, McGraw and Kelly, what happened in 1973. Spiro Agnew admitted taking bribes in his former capacity as governor of Maryland, and federal crimes, and as part of his plea agreement, pursuant to which he pled guilty to those allegations, he agreed, as part of the plea, to resign the vice presidency. Mm-hmm. Now, in the context of 2018, could there have been a deal yesterday? Perhaps. I think more likely there is this. There have, I think there have been ongoing discussions between Dowd Bennett and the prosecutors as to a resolution. And I think perhaps those had reached a point where the governor and his legal team believed that some type of a deal could be arranged. Then with the ruling in Cole County yesterday that he was ordered to respond to the subpoena, perhaps those discussions took greater urgency. Mm-hmm. So, you having put me on the spot, I'll give you as blunt an answer as I can. I don't think there was a formal deal. I do think there had been discussions that were at a stage where the governor felt comfortable that there was a light at the end of the criminal justice tunnel that he was comfortable with.
Yeah. The Spiro Agnew model, he admitted his guilt.
He did.
Yeah.
He did.
The governor in his resignation speech yesterday, admitted no guilt.
You think?
And so I guess my point is you have a governor who might not be charged with any crime, might admit no guilt whatsoever. And so historians are going to ask, why did he resign?
Well, you could make that case, but I would go back to our earlier colloquy a few moments ago, McGraw. He can say he was not convicted as a technical matter. But other than his dyed-in-the-wool rabid supporters, I think there are millions of Missourians who awakened today and said, yeah, Eric Greitens committed horrific acts that are probably crimes.
Right.
We will never technically know whether we check the box. So just to say, as with Nixon, he was never convicted, McGraw and Kelly.
Right.
Is there anyone really who believes today that Richard Nixon did not commit serious malfeasance? No.
Right.
And I think 50 years from now, 100 years from now, when they look back, there will be little doubt, if any, that Eric Greitens committed significant malfeasance.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I guess morally, the people in Missouri, I think they deserve to know, though, what really happened and if crimes were committed and if anything
I'd like
needs
to
to
know.
go further.
I'm with Kelly. I want to know. I want to know the depth of the corruption, how bad it was, and then so we can ultimately decide.
Well, again, two pieces. One, in terms of the invasion of privacy with KS. I think we know.
No,
my goodness sakes, we've had all kinds of
No, I understand that. But
the dark money.
The dark money is a much bigger issue.
Is a different issue. And I think, Kelly, you talk about the people of Missouri and all. I think it's good for us maybe to take a step back from all of the noise. And it's a horrible analogy, but I'm going to use it. Winners and losers. And I think in a way, over time, we will recognize, to paraphrase my former boss, President Gerald Ford, yesterday at about 4:30, our state's long nightmare is over. I think we owe a tip of the cap and a bit of an admiration this morning to, among other things, that judge in Cole County, Judge Rex Burleson, and the dignity with which he presided over that trial. Compare that to Judge Ito, perhaps, and OJ.
Right. Yeah.
Jay Barnes. Look how that young man comported himself, and his committee members, how they comported themselves with the impeachment proceedings. And finally, the law firm of Dowd Bennett. People want to know about the criminal justice system and how it ought to work and a defendant's right to adequate representation. Look no further than Dowd Bennett. On the other side, I am struck by Jeff Rowe and Catherine Hanaway. The comments that Catherine Hanaway made last week in going after Representative Barnes for his interaction with the FBI, just beyond the pale, mind-numbing. Just absolutely beyond the pale. And I guess then, from a personal standpoint, as we begin to turn the page on this chapter, I'm reminded of Tom Schweik and Jack Danforth's comments at Tom's funeral, in that we have seen horrible venom and some of the governor's supporters, some of the tactics they use vis-a-vis the impeachment, and they were reminiscent of what Tom suffered. But at the end of the day, as Senator Danforth reminded us and hoped in his eulogy for Tom, at the end of the day, the Missouri people and the institutions of the Missouri people, back to your question, Kelly, rose to the occasion. And it's certainly not a time to celebrate, but I think it is a time to sort of take a step back as citizens of Missouri and say to ourselves, our system worked.
All right, Greg Willard. First of all, you can turn your phone off now. Get a little vacation. We're not going to need you for at least a day or two. Secondly, so currently Ed Dowd is first chair in my dream team. I'm going to move him to second chair. Will you be first chair?
I would
when they come after me.
I would love to team up with my former partner and longtime friend Ed Dowd.
Ed Dowd, you're second chair. Greg Willard is now first chair. There you go.
I want to just throw in one other comment that we were talking about the governor's remarks, and I was reminded of another comment by Nixon that absolutely would have been applicable had the governor been a little more contrite.
Yes.
And Nixon said after the Watergate, after he had resigned, he said, "I gave them the sword,
Yes.
and they stuck it in, and they twisted it with relish." And the governor can point to all of these political opponents and all and complain about them. But at the end of the day, McGraw and Kelly, he is the one who committed the acts and engaged in that.
That's exactly right. It is exactly right. Yes, there might have been forces against him from the very beginning, and he bought the bullets and put it in the gun for him.
Precisely, my friend.
Yeah. Greg Willard, you're the best in the business. St. Louis University law professor, KTRS Legal Analyst, and now lead chair in the McGraw Millhaven defense team. Greg, thanks for coming in.
Great to be with you.